Venri Chapter 25. Garrus. He brought her back to the medbay and delivered her to her bed. She was able to walk back, but she was still easily exhausted. Light was back in her eyes, not just the false confidence and canny manipulation that had been there hours earlier. She believed him. He was still concerned about attempting to let her meet other people. He'd been able to distract her with the mystery of being involved with him, which was fine. More than fine. He couldn't count on everybody on the ship having the discipline it took to not give her information she was angling toward, or to remember not to call her commander. Javik would be able to do it, but he was more of a problem just because of who he was. She wouldn't have access to memories about Protheans. Edie was another anomaly. He'd have to arrange some briefings and some visits. Noir had offered to travel with them, and he was considering it. For now, the colony was also offering their help with the Crucible, and Tally was touring the facilities. That was enough of a reason to stay, resupply, and plan. So much Morim had yet to learn, things not yet revealed inside her own mind, and things that have happened since she was told the truth. There were impossibilities to be faced. You died. You lived again. You fought Reapers. You won. You lost. You're trying to win again. This is a Prothean. People you love have died. You are a biotic. You are commander of this vessel. The Leviathan casually ruptured your mind, which has been ruptured before. Our mother is dead. Balak killed her. He helped her into bed, kissed her forehead, and promised to go get food. Morim said to Noir, "May I have my husband back now?" "Okay, then." Garrus tilted his head toward her. "You just can't keep a secret, can you?" She smiled, not the least bit contrite. "Best to face these things head on." Noir smiled. "It is good that you know, that you want. It will be easier now that you have him with you. Spending time with him could not help but reveal to you how you cared, regardless of your memories. Some things are true and have their own language." Garrus leaned against a wall. "She started it." "You finished it." Liara shook her head. "I should have put money on it." Noir shook her head slightly. "I cannot do as you ask. You must wait. Other things must come first." "Bring it on. I want my husband back." Garrus shrugged at her. "Let me know when you remember my name." "I'm working on it." Garrus turned to Noir. "She remembers a conversation with Ashley Williams." "That is good. We know you will remember, Morim. We will move back through time, and then forward." "What do I have to do?" "You eat, and then you sleep, and then I will work." "That sounds like something I can handle." Garrus raised a finger. "Food. Coming right up." He went and spoke to Caden first, and asked him to give him some food tutorials. He should have done this a while back. Caden had been on the ship with her for a year, knew the names of things and how to put them together. While they were going over specifics, Caden asked, "How is the commander? I've been in to see her, but she's been sleeping. Sounds like she's awake now?" "She is. She's doing well for where she is in her recovery. She doesn't remember any of us." "What does Liara think?" "She thinks she's going to be okay. The hardest part is over, but she has to reassimilate her life. Some of that is enough to choke on. Let me know if I can help in any way. Thanks. I will. This helps. You can come back with me, say hi. I'm gonna start bringing people in. Just don't feel bad that she doesn't recognize you. He hoped he wasn't making a mistake, but if he was there with Kaidan, maybe he wouldn't trip. He had earned the right to see her. Thank you, Commander. Garrus gave Kaidan the rundown, ending with, "You can't tell her my name, and you can't call her Commander." Oh, no. Wait, really? We told her I was the commander. If that slips, we're screwed. She'd take over, and who would tell her no? Good point. But why your name? She knows me as Commander Vicarian. She knows I'm her husband, but I need to know when she actually remembers me versus what she's learned by digging it out of other people's brains. Well, that makes me nervous. What should I call her? I called her Ms. Shepard, then Morim. Shepard it is. I never did call her Morim. Not once. This is weird. So, it's a normal day on the Normandy. Kaidan raised a brow. Put that way? Yeah. Let me grab her a fork to go with this, and we can head over. I will try not to screw up. My bet is she'll get something out of you. Be on your guard. Kaidan closed his eyes, opened them, and said, Okay. Garrus thought a moment. I can't wait to see the day when we tell her she's a biotic. That's going to be fun. We'll be lucky if we don't lose some bulkheads. I'd like to help with that. Better you than me. I'll be there, but I can't explain how to make things glow blue. They made their way to the medbay, and Morim watched them enter. Kaidan tentatively brought her a tray. Mashed potatoes he knew, but as Kaidan had explained, most food needed to be tested for seasoning to make it palatable. Garrus could get her some seasoning dispensers so she could do it herself. Identifying the meat was harder, as it wasn't recognizably human. They were in an Asari port, and there was Asari meat that Kaidan said was about the best she was going to get. Kaidan put her tray on the swing-out support. Here you go, ma'am. Ms. Shepard. Morim, this is Kaidan Alenko. He is a member of our crew. You've worked together. Morim smiled at him. Thank you for the food. I'm sorry I don't remember you. I hope someone has explained? Kaidan smiled, awkwardly, part way, and tripped over some words. Yes, Shepard. Yes. We're all just hoping you're back to yourself soon. Kaidan's giving me some help with the human food. He picked dinner out for you. Morim looked at Kaidan with a slight brow raise. Thank you. I'm sure it's fine. I appreciate it. She was subdued and tired. Kaidan was so uncomfortable he just stood there, shifting weight from one foot to the other. Morim tilted her head back and looked at Kaidan, then looked at Garrus, then looked back at Kaidan. That bad, huh? Kaidan stammered. Garrus crossed his arms over his chest. You're making him nervous. Morim raised her eyebrow fully. I'm making him nervous? She smiled, looked at Kaidan, and said, Oh, if I could get you in a room alone. What's-his-name wouldn't allow that, would he? Kaidan looked at Garrus and then fled. Garrus's eyes followed Kaidan's retreat, and then smiled. Best outcome, really. Morim smiled and crossed her arms over her chest. I'm definitely evil. Garrus turned back to her. I'm not going to argue. He sat with her as she ate quietly, and then held her hand as she was sedated back into controlled sleep. After Noir spent a brief time with Morim, Garrus waited. He was told that she was doing well. She would need to sleep for 8 hours, and when she woke, they would attempt restoring knowledge of biotics to her and her military training. Thanking Noir, he returned to command decisions. There was an update from Primarch Victus, who had overseen the reconnaissance of Caduceus Station. No survivors. The station's bulkheads had been ruptured. His mother had likely suffered partially the same fate that Morim had herself. Death without oxygen. Add to that the decompression of the station, she would have died faster. Station monitoring had confirmed loss of vital signs within minutes. He closed his eyes. Her body had not been recovered, but he was assured she was gone. He was rippling with the guilt of having not protected his mother. It felt like bleeding cuts everywhere, under his plates, guilt and grief leaking from unstoppable sources. Victus was pursuing possible exploitation of the study data. Traynor and Edie were still working on locating Balak. What he would do when he found Balak. How he would explain it all to Morim. He had no idea. He wanted to tear Balak to pieces in cold blood. As cold as possible. He'd enjoy it most if the men were sleeping. He wanted an unfair fight. He wanted him to suffer. He might have blamed Morim for it. It might have worked had Morim been herself, had been there to argue, to feel responsible. Now with his bondmate struggling for her identity, he knew better. Had different priorities. Perhaps he had learned something over time. His mother had ordered him to watch over Morim, and he would. His mother would want him to be sane, would want him to care for Morim and not blame her. His mother wouldn't have wanted ugliness, would have given her life to spare him from it, probably spent her last moments regretting pain she might cause, as Morim had. He was aware that he wouldn't have visited his family, gone back at all, if it hadn't been at Morim's insistence. In ugly truth, he'd abandoned his mother when he left C-Sec, and again when he went to Omega. Twice. Unrepentantly. She'd given him forgiveness anyway, only asking to see him happy, giving him a way to be bonded before witnesses. Morim had given him back to his family. Morim had saved hostages. Morim was not responsible for the results. He wouldn't allow Balak to make her responsible. She'd feel she was. He loved 2 women who would want him to let vengeance go, deliver Balak to authorities for questioning, find out how data was being used. But they loved him as well. He would get a vote. Right now he got the only vote. He took his rifle to the battery and set up his regional targeting program, testing his sighting capabilities on virtual targets and accuracy with virtual shots. The structure of the physical activity and mental exertion gave him just enough space to think, but not enough space to feel. He was now in command. He could divert everything to tracking down Balak now, before the trail went cold. Measured against Morim's health, it wouldn't be done. She required his full attention. He was negligent in a few categories on that front, listing her as physically injured but not mentally incapacitated. Second in command to a Spectre with spotty communications was working out in his favor. He didn't want her relieved of command. They were staying in one place and not moving forward with other missions. Officially, they were here to garner support for the Crucible. As far as command was concerned, Leviathan were still under investigation. He considered how to preserve options, forward the mission, get everything done. He considered more targets, then paused the program. He was in command. The people he had at his command included Javik. Javik had excruciatingly vicious answers to problems. Garrus could call on Kasumi, who would find Balak for him. Garrus could put Javik in contact with Zaid Masani. Between the two of them, every bit of information would be extracted from Balak before he was killed with extreme prejudice. Garrus considered all of the personal choices Morim had been unable to make while in command. He understood better the constraints against what he might personally want to do, the constraint she had felt against doing what she had personally wanted to do. He was going to send Javik after Balak. It would get Javik off the ship so Morim wouldn't trip over him. Garrus didn't need to have specifics about how Javik handled Balak. As much as Garrus wanted to feel Balak's throat crushed in his own hands, Javik would ensure suffering. Enough so that perhaps Garrus didn't want to ask, didn't want to see. But he could trust in a satisfactory outcome. He wouldn't look, and he'd advise Morim to do the same. Between Javik and Masani, he almost pitied Balak. Morim had wiped out 300,000 Batarians, innocents. He would only go after one, guilty. He thought of Morim trying to protect him from killing Dr. Salion, killing Sidonis. Her choices could be justified, though he still didn't really agree on either. He'd shoot all three of them if she were not involved. He was past protecting, far beyond feeling guilt for loss of innocent life. He'd condemned millions to death since the Reaper invasion. He would not apologize. He wanted to have the murderer of his mother torn to painful pieces over a long period of time. The relative innocence of thinking, as she had with Salion, as she had with Sidonis, that she could protect him from the experience of taking a life in vengeance was irrelevant now that he'd made enough choices in this war to cost potentially millions of innocent lives. As though it could weigh heavier upon him somehow. The first time they'd gone out, he'd asked for her help with Salion. The second time they'd gone out, he'd asked for her help with Sidonis. The third time, he could do it alone, but he had help. Her choices had already cost her life once. It had cost her psyche, which she likely wouldn't have survived without help. He'd put his psyche on the line to protect future victims from the likes of Balak. Morim might be disappointed in him, but he no longer worried about argument or disagreement. She made the choice about letting Balak go. He'd abided by it. He'd make the choice to end his life and she would have to abide by that. And if she didn't like it, perhaps she shouldn't have jumped into an ocean, leaving him in command. He was going to delegate. Time to practice tactics and biotics. She was physically better and no longer needed any help walking. Unfortunate. If he was lucky, maybe she'd get injured and he could carry her back. Now that her recovery was going so well, he didn't mind that she was confined to bed in a room where he always knew where she was. He almost smiled. He brought her to Vega and Caden in the shuttle bay. Caden hung back, but Vega came over. "Lola, you're up. Ready to beat the hell out of us?" Lola? Nickname. He just looked like a Lola. Moram gestured at Garrus. What's his nickname? Trying to get me in trouble with scars here? Couldn't hurt to try. Do I beat the hell out of you regularly? Only twice so far, but you promised we could do it again. Moram held out her hands in a bring it on gesture. Here's your chance. Vega held out his hands in a whoa gesture. Oh, hell no. I break it, I buy it. This is refresher training, not sparring. Garrus told Vega. I could always break your nose like I wanted. Vega walked to the mat. Yeah, I get it. Come on, Lola. You already know this, but let's see what you don't know. Moram stepped out onto the mat and she was smiling. Vega didn't intimidate her at all. It only took a few seconds to see why. Once he signaled to start, she knocked Vega off his feet with a controlled biotic burst and kept doing it until she had him in position on his stomach. She had him in a chokehold with his hands immobilized in a few more seconds. She'd either been holding back every time he'd seen her fight, or something from this Leviathan deal gave her more speed and focus. Her biotics had flares of color he hadn't seen before. Not from her, not from anybody. She smiled back at Garrus. Are we good? Caden said, I'm good. You remember how to reeve? Definitely. I'll take your word for it. Garrus can... Oh, shit. Garrus shook his head as Moram smiled at him. Garrus can... what? Garrus laughed. He'd figured it wouldn't last the day. Don't sweat it, Caden. She was gonna get it out of someone. I'm assuming that meant Garrus could take the brunt of it if he wanted to test you further. I'll just have to rely on things nobody else knows but me. Moram stood up and offered a hand to Vega, who took it and stood. So, none shall pass, is what you're saying, Garrus? Am I allowed to call you Garrus? None shall pass until you answer my questions 3. More fairy tales. Yes, it's just Garrus to you. Though I don't mind you calling me Commander, either. I have fond memories of you calling me Vicarian as well. Damn, questions 3 is gonna make it harder, but not impossible. It's not supposed to be impossible, just measured. Moram nodded at Caden. So, your job is clearly not as a spy. Caden shrugged. No, right now my main utility is fetching meals. Damn it. I appreciate it. I couldn't find my way to the mess just yet without asking for directions, and I don't know if that's going to be on the test. A joke, as the mess was directly outside the medbay. Garrus told her. The next question is, what is your OmniTool password? It was still fuck_off_Garrus, because why mess with something that works? He told her, you're stronger than you were before. Do you know the difference? Can you tell? Right now, I only have the knowledge of how to do it. I don't remember doing it before. I guess that would lead to situations? Upsetting situations? Deeply upsetting situations, but you went through them once. You'll be fine the second time around. It's just going to take a little while. Would you mind testing out your new speed on me? I'd like to try it on. Just without the biotics, please. I'd like you to demonstrate those to Liara, carefully, later. It doesn't look human, and it doesn't look Asari, but she might know what they are. Sure? Caden and Vega backed away from the mat more than might be strictly necessary for being spectators. She was motionless other than looking him up and down once, with a quirk to her lips. There was no play of humor or recognition in her eyes. He assumed she already knew what she was going to do because there was also no calculation. He nodded to start, and she moved in quickly. No testing. He jabbed at her, and she blocked, then twisted her blocking arm around his striking arm, trapping it. Her speed was blurring, and her strength was approaching his. She yanked his torso forward, swept his legs out from under him at an angle so he pitched forward. She had him down with her straddling his waist, fists on either side of his throat. She leaned forward until her breasts were pressed against his back, and her mouth near his ear. Are we good? He heard Vega say. Now I feel much better. Caden said, I'm glad I didn't go first. Garrus was going to respond by being in shock for a few seconds, a hard flush of blood to his skin and brain, plates bulging at the sound of her voice at his ear. Shock, and then conflicting impulses. To answer her question, ask her to do that again, or flip her over and see if he could hold her down. It took a few seconds to imagine it, kissing her until she clung to him. He wondered if she'd ever cling to him again or just shove him against a wall. Either one was good as far as he was concerned. Not with witnesses. Not right now. He wondered if she'd been holding back on strength all along. No way to really know without Morim telling him, and she might just lie for any of the multiple reasons she chose to lie. He said, once he could manage it, we're good. You don't have to get up, though. This works for me. The fists at either side of his neck opened, palms and fingers on the height of his throat, lingering in strokes that made him stifle a groan. She said, Good to know, Commander, against his ear. And then she was gone. As he stood, he made a promise to himself to make sure she knew what it was like to cling to him. She wanted him. He could sense it on her, around her. Maybe he'd just gotten weaker because it took so much strength to restrain himself from what he really wanted to do. He could hope. He wanted to get a read on some of her changes of personality, wanted to get as many examples of her behavior in this state as he could. She hadn't done any physical harm to him or Vega. She'd just passed whatever test they gave her as quickly as possible, no screwing around as she was accustomed to doing. She screwed around for her own reasons. He'd screw around for his. He asked her, Let me get a baseline strength testing, for comparison purposes. Arm wrestle? She quirked a brow. Comparison? Have we done this before? No, but now I wish I had. We can do it after. All right. They dragged chairs to either side of a flat console and gave it a try. Vega and Caden followed them. "Don't you both have something better to do?" "No. Cleared my schedule. Besides, that's my chair." "Not unless she's hungry." Garrus snorted, sat down, put his elbow down, and smiled at her until she put her elbow down as well. When they were ready, Vega said, "Go." Garrus started to push. She pushed back. They stayed in a wobbling strain at the top there for a few seconds. She caught his eye and dropped her shoulders slightly, just slightly. And then he was able to push her hand down. She was looking at him intently. Her back was to Caden and Vega, and she pushed back against his hand, holding it still and gaining a little ground, while Caden and Vega were rooting for her. Then she dropped her shoulder again and let him push her hand down, which he did slowly. He stared at her for a moment. Caden and Vega finally took the hint and walked away, with Vega muttering, "Too much to hope, I guess." She watched Garrus carefully, and he let her hands go. He told her, "Thanks." She nodded. "Let's go test weapons proficiency." She grinned at him. Now that sounds like fun. He'd picked up her weapons and brought them for maintenance to the battery, where he led her and set her up with some simulations. He observed, "You're quiet." She nodded. "Seems this is a serious place for serious people. I just want to get through this, get back to who I am, though it seems I may not be pleased." There's a lot to not be pleased about. But it's not about you, it's about the situation. "Why did you throw the arm wrestle?" She shrugged. "You want information. I can give it to you. I trust you, but I don't know those guys. I don't know your relationship to them. I don't know my relationship to them. I'll tell you, but I don't have to advertise it. I imagine if I lied about my strength, or if I have a lot of new strength, there'd be a reason to hide it, or you wouldn't have asked. Pulling you off balance to win a fight is one thing. Flat out overpowering you is another." "Could you overpower me?" She shrugged. "I don't think so. I'm strong and I'm fast, but I don't have any other context. It's like all my training was done with faceless dummies and combat simulators. I don't feel any way or the other about it, but tactically I'm nervous putting it all out there. When you're back to yourself, you'll be back out in the field." "Yeah, I know, and you can't tell me what field." "Garrus." "A field where you need to shoot and fight. I will be there with you. I've been there with you." She gestured to the gun and the simulation he was setting up. "All right, Commander, let's see what you got." He tilted his head. "This isn't mine. This is yours. Mine's the Widow." He gestured to the monster gun. "Really? Let's see what you got with that. Can I try?" He shrugged. "You could, but that's not your favorite. Too slow. You lack patience." She twisted her lip. "Yeah, I believe I have figured that out about myself." He picked up the Widow and hooked up the simulation controls. "I just beat you recently at a shootout, so I can be smug, and you get to practice." He ran through 20 targets, 20 down, 42 seconds. He handed her the gun, and she laughed, hefting it. He started the simulation, and she ran through 20 targets, 19 down, and then she pointed up and missed the last one, 39 seconds. "You sure I didn't fake letting you win?" "No. You can't take that away from me. You're just trying to fuck with me." She shrugged, handing him the rifle. "Okay, if you say so. I'm sure I'd never, ever have fucked with you." No, it won't work. I will confirm that you are evil." I'm pretty sure I figured that out for myself also. "Give me my actual gun. I'll be impatient with it." 20 targets down. 35 seconds. She looked at the gun. "It's got grooves I've worn into it that fit my fingers. And I don't remember it." "You will." She looked up at him. "No doubt, but then I will be gone and I'll be someone else. Someone with a past and a life and a future. A past I need to be shielded from and a future that involves killing people. It is what you chose." She narrowed her eyes. "Are you sure? Or did it choose me? I just want to read a book or something, and I can't." She held up her hand. "Omni-tool disabled because I might learn something." "I could read you a story." She rested her head against the wall. "Do you have any idea how weird this all is?" He tilted his head and shrugged. "Yep, and it gets weirder. We were going to spend a few hours working on your fighting skills. How about we just don't do that and do something else?" "Well, at least I won't forget it. Hopefully." "Hey, I can do my awkward impression. It's me, but just a few years ago. So we can meet each other for the first time. Again." She smiled and closed her eyes, tilting her head back against the wall. "An awkward off, huh? How awkward do I get on a scale of 1 to 10? "Who, you? You, Shepard? You're a 1 on that scale. No, wait, a 0. Wait, can we use negative integers? How about imaginary numbers? I could draw up a chart." What would I have said in answer to that? "I feel like a negative imaginary number." First, you'd just look at me as though I were crazy, but you understood, sort of. There! Yes, like that. Perfect. So, I'm patronizing? Well, yes, though I haven't been properly patronized, disarmed, redirected, or lied to lately. I miss it. Well, if it helps, I have lied to you. It's to be expected. Information is power. You want it." She looked at him, considering. "I don't remember you. I know it's planned that way, and I can't, but I don't remember you, and I don't know that I gave you the mark on your neck. I'm sorry." "Well, you did." He stepped forward and pointed to the crack on the plating and paint on his nose. "You also did this." She squinted. "I broke your nose?" "Oh, yeah. And my knee." "What did you do to deserve that?" "Accused you of lying and pushed you for the truth." Was I lying? Not exactly. You were withholding the truth, though. It mattered to me. Did I tell you? You did. It just took a little effort and the loss of a joint. This will take some effort, but you can keep your knees. I feel I should at least offer an elbow or something. You've offered enough. When was the last time you got some sleep? 37 hours. Is it okay for a Turian to be up that long? Not really. I should get some sleep, but I don't want to miss anything. Okay. You were going to test my proficiency. I'm tested. Get some rest. Please. He rubbed his eyes. You are doing so well. You're so very close to being back to yourself, and I don't want to miss any of it. I don't want to sleep until I can do it with my arms wrapped around you. I don't think I can rest on my own. I could sleep, but I'd wake up tired. Not to be dramatic, but it does have to do with being bonded, knowing you are near. I can hang on longer than a human. After that long without sleep, how much sleep do you need? 4 hours is the most I usually get. Even 1 or 2 hours would make a difference. Where do you usually sleep? We have a cabin, but I can't take you there. Too many reminders, too many opportunities for you to be you and make me too nervous to sleep. And if I promise to behave? He stretched his neck and shoulders out. I would not believe you. She tilted her head. Okay, that's fair. I haven't known me for very long, but if there's sufficient temptation... Yeah, and we're not even talking about my body. Well, don't count yourself out yet. He smiled appreciatively. You're right, though. I lost the knee last time I got this close to exhaustion. Her brows drew together. Look, I understand that you can't trust me to hold still and that you wouldn't be able to rest. Would you agree to sleeping in front of witnesses? I've got a bed in the med bay, and I've got nothing to do for a few hours. I could be watched, and you could hold on to me, and you could get some sleep. Well, on one condition. What? Let me carry you there. It'll be romantic. She stepped up and held her arms out to her sides in surrender. For the intimidating gentleman with the big gun? Anything. You are sounding more and more like yourself all the time. I lifted her off the floor. Okay, let's do this right. Put your arms around me. She did. Oh, this is hard. This is good, but this is hard. She leaned up to kiss him, and he drew in a fast breath, tightened his arms around her, pulled her in closer, lost himself in tasting her. His talons were itching to spring free, to mark her. He poured the teasing frustration into her, nipping at her lips, rubbing against the side of her face, tasting the skin at her neck. He flicked his mandible outward and traced her jawline with it. It's a good thing we're going to have witnesses. My sleeping body is going to have ideas. She rubbed her lips against his throat. We could stay here and get reacquainted. I don't mind. Oh, stop. Can't. You're evil. Thank you for clinging to me, though. It's a lovely touch. She tipped her head back, breathing hard, and he carried her to the medbay. Moram explained. He's tired. He needs rest. He doesn't trust me to not go secret agent, so he'll sleep here with me. He doesn't want to miss anything. He just nodded, heading to an empty bed, pulling the curtain around it and saying, 4 hours. Everything can start again in 4 hours. He pulled her gently onto the narrow bed, gestured for her to roll to her side, which she did, a smile on her lips. He slipped in behind her, muscles aching and mind screaming for rest on his terms. His sternum blade was pressed to her spine. Then he pulled her ass back against him with a soft growl. He kissed her on the back of the neck and moved his mouth to her ear. Mine. Stay. Have I told you that you're kind of bossy? Not often enough. Say, good night, Commander. Good night, Commander. He growled softly and kissed the back of her neck, drew his hand to his shoulder, painting her with his scent, down the bridge of her nose, along her jawline, along her cheekbones. Take Shakarian markings, Venri. You are mine. He whispered in her ear that he loved her, and accepting that she would be safe in his arms, fell asleep.